Hi, and welcome back to the third video in our 5-video series. Today, we're going to be talking about the family member's role and the relational triangle. Now, the relational triangle is a pretty basic model where I write in the book about how there is this interdependent relationship between the resident, your loved one, you as a family member, and the care team members, the staff who work in the home. And I wrote it to help to create some awareness around how each role in this new relationship dynamic in this new community really is interdependent and supportive on each other. Your loved one, their new resident, is developing relationships with the various care team members from the different departments, from housekeeping and laundry and dietary to the frontline staff who provide the support and the care with the PSWs and the registered staff, as well as different leadership members of the team. Likewise, your relationship with your loved one is changing in this new relational triangle because you are supported by a team of members in the home that are also providing care. And it may be perhaps that you are stepping away from that primary sole caregiver role, and now you're part of a team. And how your role and relationship with your loved one is also changing because they're living in a new environment and they are ideally making new friends and contacts and relationships in that home. And then, of course, there's the relational dynamic between yourself and the care team members. And so I find that new family members, it gives them an awareness of recognizing that they're no longer necessarily white knuckling and providing all of the care and support and the decision making on their own, but it's this relational triangle that now exists. There's a section in the book where I've dedicated a chapter to each of these 7 A's. And when I reflected on my emotional journey on the 3 different occasions, as well as talking to many family members, I started to see this pattern emerge. And you'll see, as I say in the book, this isn't a linear path, but it is likely that you will step into and experience each of these different phases of the 7 A's. It may typically start with that sense of awareness, a big change is happening, and awareness of, for example, the relational triangle, and really trying to get a grip on what your new role and responsibility and relationships are all about. The step around acknowledging is acknowledging the reality of this suboptimal situation. This is likely not something that you ever imagined would be a part of your future, and here we are, and being able to acknowledge the realities, the good, the bad, and the ugly about it, to be able to then be able to adapt. And that adaptability of this new life circumstance and situation into your life. I was speaking at a family council meeting, and one of the family members, he commented on how out of all the 7 A's, this is the one that really resonated with him, because adaptability, it's an ongoing process. You continue to adapt as the situation changes, as your loved one's condition changes. And then that piece around acceptance. It kind of goes back to, it doesn't mean that we have to like what's happening, but there is value in being able to accept and say, okay, this is what it is. How do we make the best of it? Allowing is a bit about how do you allow other people to be able to provide support? How do you allow yourself to perhaps see some of the silver linings that are happening? How do you allow yourself to start opening up more space in your life outside of your caregiver role? The chapter that talks about being accountable, that level of accountability, I share a bit of the perspective of what you may or may not know of the staff experience, the care team members, and that as family members, we have accountability in how we show up. We are responsible for the energy that we're bringing into the space, and we have accountability in how to best manage and collaborate and work with the care team members as part of our new care team. And appreciate is Some people get there sooner than others. It's this whole idea that, and I recognize for myself, to be able to appreciate the new relationships that Ty was developing, or with my mom, appreciating that she was able to make a few new relationships and friendships in the home that she never would have if she continued to live on her own by herself. And that there are some real gifts that can be offered up in a time where we may say, you know what, if we had our choice, we would prefer not to have had to go down this path. And so that leads to some of these I find to be really powerful questions that we can ask ourselves. How will I choose to show up as a family member? How am I showing up in this new role and this new identity that I have as a member of this community? And how will I choose to interact with the care team members? And you'll notice that the word choose is in both of those questions, because it's the how can I respond versus react when issues arise. And you'll see I've put in red there, heads up, there will always be issues. So going to those first two questions, this idea around choice, we always have a choice in how we want to show up, how we want to interact, the kind of energy that we want to bring into the space. And I'm not saying that the choice is always easy, because there are times where we may get triggered and we may react and we feel angry and defensive, and words come out of our mouth and that angry expression on our face. And then after, we can tend to cool down and look back on things. But this ability to be able to choose and be intentional with how you're showing up and the energy that you're bringing, and then to be able to look when a situation happens, when issues arise, because they always do, in that moment between stimulus and response is that space, that power to choose your response. And the more we're able to recognize and pause, and in fact, and now what I have a chapter that's called Porch, that is a framework for how to basically do what I'm just talking about, the power of that pause, and to be able to reframe and reset, to then be able to approach it in a more productive kind of way. That leads me to a chapter that I had some fun writing, and I was almost hesitant to put it in the book, but it's about the family flavors. And in a nutshell, because you can certainly read more about it in the book, I tend to see there are typically three types of families, categories, or that have these kinds of moments. And the first are the sweet and savories. And those are the families that they're very comfortable in the community. They know the care team members by their first name, and the care team members know them. They know if they've got a dog and some of the antics that it gets up to. They have built a relationship, and they understand the comings and goings. They tend to know everything that's going on in the home. And they are also great spokespeople for new family members. Now, it doesn't mean that issues don't happen with sweet and savories, because they do. It's how they have invested in the relationship and really work collaboratively as best as they can to resolve any issues that come up. The second group of families I call the salt and peppers, and they tend to be the majority of families in a home. Sometimes salt and peppers, they aren't really present. They may live in a different province or another country. They just may not have the ability or the desire to be spending a lot of time in the community. They keep up to date with any news information. They have conversations with the staff. The staff don't tend to really know them. They don't really have much conversation about what's going on. When they do, they're able to work through it, but again, they don't tend to have a strong presence in the home. The jalapenos, like the name says, can be hot and spicy. And they tend to be the minority of the population in a home, but I would say they probably take up a disproportionate amount of time from the staff because of the challenges and the concerns and how their approach can be. And I use these labels a bit tongue-in-cheek, because I think it's more about how people have their sweet and savory moments, or their salt and pepper moments, or their jalapeno moments. And I also write about this because I have also been all three types of families, and having all three types of moments in my 3 times of being a family member. The reason that I share this is because I think it's important for families to understand, as much as you're coming into the home and you're sizing up the staff and trying to figure out your way around, the care team are also anticipating, remember that admission anxiety, and they're sizing up families. And so, as I talk about in the book, if you are noticing that care team members aren't making eye contact with you, or you're approaching them and all of a sudden they turn about face and off they go, it may be that they're experiencing some jalapeno moments with you and they're feeling a bit intimidated or afraid. So this is really more, when we talk about that knowledge gap, is a bit of the, let's just call it out there and see where you're at. And I've had family members who, well, in fact, I'm going to show you a video in a moment, who now have integrated it in their language and are using that as a way to be able to catch themselves and, when necessary, pause and reset and reframe the conversation so that it's going to be in the best interests of everybody involved. So I'd like to introduce you to Carolyn. She's a family member I had the distinct pleasure of interviewing, and she's going to share some thoughts with you.
My jalapeno moments haven't come from, my aunt's hair's not done or her lipstick's not on. It's more of not understanding why something's happening and having to dig for it. That's been a frustration because everything I've learned, I've had to ask. Nobody told me, so actually your meeting on the Zoom meeting, 4 months in, was the thing that allowed me to breathe, because I realized, okay, I can talk to other caregivers, and the other caregivers want to talk with me and share with me. Some of them have been in there for 10 years, so, I rely on them sometimes too to ask questions.
I so appreciated that conversation with Carolyn, and a lot of family members can resonate with what she was talking about. And as you could see, she had this playful approach in looking back at her jalapeno moments, and it helped her to be able to develop an even stronger, more collaborative, trusting relationship with the care team. I want to just read a quick paragraph that I wrote in the final thoughts of Now What, that speaks to this. As I shared earlier, it's important to be able to accept this new reality. Although that doesn't mean you have to like what's happening. I remember my therapist asking me, after Ty is gone and you look back at this time, how do you want to remember it? She asked me to consider how I wanted to feel. How did I want my kids to feel? And so I share this with you, as well as to look at these questions. How do you want to, or what do you want to remember about this experience as a family member? When the day comes that sadly your loved one passes on, when you look back, how do you want to remember this? And how do you want to feel about your loved one's final chapter and your support role? It is such an incredible opportunity to reframe, understanding that things aren't always going to be perfect. There will be issues, but this is a relationship in that relational triangle that involves so many people, and all showing up and bringing their energy for the best care and quality of life for your loved one. So these are great questions to think about yourself and to share with new family members.